they would do risk stratification so that their bed utilization is very high. Yes, point well taken. Now with that, let's move on to the case presentation. On to the group.
So good afternoon, Professor, and very good afternoon, everyone. I take this opportunity to present the case study on NH, cardiac care for poor, on behalf of entire team who managed to take time out of their daily routines. The initial slide would be taken care of by me, and thereafter the baton shall be passed to the key team members. As you all must have read the case study in detail, but I would like to touch upon few facts before starting the presentation. As we all know, healthcare industry is growing and considered defensive and non-cyclical because of its has a less impact in geopolitical and economic changes. But having said that, in healthcare segment, cardiovascular disorders leads from the front, as Indian genes are 3 times more vulnerable to the heart disease. We can say changes in lifestyle, food habits, stress, anxiety, worsen it further. It is the most common illness in India. From Sri Devi to Sushma Swaraj and from Siddharth Shukla to KK, all could not come out from their cardiac disorders. So it is not only affected the aged, but the people in 30s and 40s are majorly affected, and mostly due to congenital disorders. Newborn are affected, which make the situation more vulnerable. Apart from these remedial measures, and no matter people have become more aware about their health, increased number of hospitals, increased number of healthcare facilities, increased insurance coverage, still there is a huge white space in the country due to huge increasing population, and still big chunk of people are still not taking the things seriously or are unaware. Therefore, which it provides scalability and sustainability to the sector. So leaving our thoughts aside, please allow me to showcase our presentation on Narayana Hridayalaya NH, cardiac care for poor. Requested everyone to park your questions, concerns, suggestions till we finish our presentation so as to make our link and momentum. Starting with the slide, agenda, founders, vision and mission, NH suite of services, NH unique approach, SWOT analysis, what's next, and then Q&A. So let us start with the presentation. Yes, we are talking about founders, vision and vision. So let me introduce you the main man with a vision and mission. Yes, I'm talking about Dr. Devi Prasad Shetty. When the world said no, he at NH said yes to provide a quality and affordable cardiac care to masses, applied with an ideology of caring with compassion to create a new healthcare economic model which caters niche therapies like onco, neuro, ortho, etc. into a basket to make a complete multi-speciality hospital. If we say a few things about NH, at NH, the word unique is a protocol, be it the buildings, equipment, doctors, nurses, treatment, and cardiac care and care for patients. See, if you see the right-hand side of the pictorial images, you will see 2 images. One is doctor operating in top-class OT, and the second, an infant undergone with a life-threatening OHS, open heart surgery, means in a pediatric unit. Just to tell you about the OHS to be done in a newborn baby, where the heart size is just the size of his or her fist, we can understand how complex it is, and NH specializes in it. NH has its own valve bank, which is one among the 4 in India, which outclasses it from the rest. Yes, a unique insurance scheme which an endeavor to cure the world's poor for less than $1 a day, and a concept of telemedicine which they introduced in those times, which became popular 20 years down the line during our COVID times. Now we shall come to know more about NH in coming slides, and therefore I hand over my baton to Ketki. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bhavin. This is a case, like Bhavin mentioned, where perhaps the person and his vision is arguably bigger than the firm, at least based on the data that we have currently. Dr. Devi Shetty had a lot of influences in his personality based on his time spent in London, Calcutta, and also being the personal physician for Mother Teresa, which is why this cardiac care for poor, this concept was very dear to him, is still very dear to him. While cardiology and cardiac surgery was the focus area of NH as an entity as such, they equally split between 2 sectors. One is specialized quality care for the paid customer, but also compassionate care was offered, where people who could not afford but needed cardiac treatment were never sent away. The theme was that no patient will go away untreated as such. And always the focus on the care provided would never be dependent on how much a person can pay or their affordability. Um, Also, pediatric care as such at that point in time was very perhaps rare in India, which is why that was a focus for NH as a whole. Excuse me. Around 40% of the procedures and treatments that were conducted in NH were pediatric in nature. So they did set up a 50-bed intensive pediatric therapy unit, and they also later towards the end of the case we see that they have they have diversified into training for pediatric cardiac surgery. They were perhaps not the first movers, but they were, sort of the pioneers in telemedicine, as Bhavin mentioned earlier. And the reason for this was, while 70% of the hospitals are located in urban areas, they saw that almost an equal demand came from the rural areas, which is what they wanted to address. There are cases where they mention misdiagnosis of cardiac cases being misdiagnosed as acidity and things like that, which we recently see in KK's case also, which is why they decided to go into telemedicine. And along with funding that they sought from Asian Heart Foundation, around 29 cardiac care units were set up, and nearly 10,000 or more teleconsultations were done. And the idea was that with this facility, it brings the doctor closer to the patient, because Dr. Shetty was very keen that after a patient actually looks at a doctor, that gives them a lot of confidence about the kind of treatment. This also later became an avenue for them to break open international borders, because telemedicine helps connect people in other geographies, or basically an international beyond India as a country as such. And given the importance and the recognition that this was getting, there was buy-in both from the state government to help set everything up and make um, laws favorable, and also ISRO, because they helped with the connectivity issues. And with that, I'll hand this over to Ganesh.
Thank you, Kirti. So taking up from what Kirti mentioned about the focus on affordability. So the NH team realized that financing of healthcare is a key element in India healthcare success story. So what we see from this case study is a few schemes like the Narayana Hridayalaya, which was offered with a concessional scheme for healthcare treatment. And wherever the patients could not afford the treatment, there was also a Narayana Hridayalaya Trust, which was offering support through free care. And that was also an option that was provided. In addition, what we see in this case study is a few touches of innovation. And Dr. Shetty saw the benefit of using cooperative financing as an example to enable people to come forward and take healthcare support. So he looked at an opportunity where 1.7 million farmers and their families in Karnataka were able to benefit from the healthcare through a kind of an insurance scheme with a healthcare card. So these are some of the facets which came out, which enabled people to come forward and take the benefit of the healthcare. The other pillar of this model is the group of doctors and nurses. And I think that's another area we see that a huge focus has been given to training and teaching. For example, we see 19 postgraduate courses being offered to doctors. And way back in 2005, there was also a course offered as a diploma in cardiology, India's first course in this subject. And the focus has been to ensure that there are enough and more doctors and specialist doctors in cardiology who come up through this. Also, there was an awareness on the need for nurses. So there's a nursing college, which was also developed within the premises of NH. And even there, where nurses who weren't able to afford the course fee, there was the guarantee that was given support for the funding of the course, and the students were offered an opportunity to work in NH. So overall, we see that there are some innovative steps taken to build the building block of NH. The other aspect is to take healthcare to the people who need it, and therefore the cardiac lab, which was formed, mobile cardiac lab, it was an initiative to reach out to towns and villages, say 800 kilometers away from metros, through tie-ups with certain organizations like Rotary. So overall, when we look at these suite of services, we see certain touches of innovation and forward thinking that arise. Can we move to the next slide, please? So what is unique about it? And when we deliberated on the uniqueness, what we see is the entire infrastructure of hospitals. That's really the focus of how that can be used effectively. And we see that there are more number of OHS and catheterization procedures which are being performed, almost 8 times compared to other Indian hospitals. We see this in Exhibit 8 to the case study. And there is a comparison of the number of procedures done. While this, the comparison is not foolproof because all hospitals are not compared, but we get an idea of how the focus has been on increasing volumes of procedures and treatments. The objective being to lower the per unit cost. And we also see that certain infrastructure build-up that is happening, for example, even the number of blood tests which are done per machine per day being significantly increased compared to what other normal hospitals were doing. As Professor had mentioned earlier, managing suppliers was a key element, and therefore the NH team looked at leasing versus buying approach for expensive medical equipments, etc. And they did not want to tie themselves down to 1 or 2 suppliers, so they avoided long-term contracts. Managing the staff cost was a critical element, and we see that in this case, they had fixed salaries for doctors instead of a share of revenue. So overall, the ethos was to manage costs in a much more scientific manner. And this led to low capex, which was a very important focus area. Being from the city of Bangalore and Karnataka, we see that a lot of adoption of technology and digitization has also found its roots here. We see there is an increased use of software, digital imaging being used instead of the traditional X-rays for films for X-rays, and that's really enabled NH to drive down costs in terms of avoiding recurrent costs. Hospital management is a key area of focus for NH, and we see that they're using software for monitoring funds. That's how the case study reads. All of this effectively leads to cost optimization through such innovative procedures. And one example is what comes out is the use of generic drugs. So the use of prescription drugs in India is fairly common, fairly expensive, making it unaffordable to people requiring healthcare. So the NH team is looking at options to use more generic drugs of quality, which can be a good substitute where required. Overall, and my colleagues Bhavin and Ketki emphasized the role of Dr. Shetty himself and his leadership, which kind of enables NH to be a strong influencer to government regulations or even other manufacturers to promote India local manufacturing to bring the costs down. So these were some of the uniqueness that has been advocated and followed by NH, which will now lead us to the next section. And I'll pass the baton to my colleague Suresh, talking about the SWOT analysis. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganesh. In fact, we had a very intense brainstorming for around 12 hours that what should be presented and how we have to present it. In fact, we have decided to do away with a lot of statistics and all those stuff and to present a narrative because it's more about analysis of the strategies. So before we go into the SWOT analysis as such, I would like to bring out why we have basically brought this SWOT analysis instead of other analytical tools like PESTEL or Porter's 5 forces of industry, attractiveness, or so on. Actually, we initially thought of including those as well into it. But finally, we thought Potter's 5 forces of industry attractiveness would be covered in the threads. So we decided not to go with it. Then later there was a discussion whether to include pestle or not. Pestle, since it is all about external environment, that in any case we'll be covering in opportunities and threats. So we have discarded even that. And even in all that, we have avoided putting any numbers to it because we thought it is irrelevant because where it doesn't drive the strategies as it is. Because we have to see the so-called world of uncertainties into future. So that would be better analyzed if we dissect the case without much of putting numbers to it. So now coming to SWOT analysis, it is basically a technique for assessing the performance, competition, risk, potential of a business as well as a part of business such as product line or division or an industry or other entity. In this, we use both external as well as internal data or analysis. And then the technique can guide businesses towards strategies more likely to be successful and away from those in which they have been and or likely to be less successful. So independent SWOT analysts, investors or competitors can guide them on whether a company, product line or an industry might be strong or weak and why. Analysts present a SWOT analysis as a square segmented into 4 quadrants, which you are seeing right now. So each segment analyzes one particular aspect of the country, that company, which is called a SWOT analysis, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This visual arrangement provides a quick overview of company's position. Although all the points under a particular heading may not be of equal importance, they should represent the key insights into the balance of opportunities and threats, advantages and disadvantages, and so forth. Strengths. Why do we incorporate strengths? Strengths basically describe the organization, what it excels at, or the so-called core competencies, and what separates it from the competition. It may be like strong brand value or loyal customer base, strong balance sheet, unique technology, and etc. And the weaknesses, in the weaknesses, we basically try to analyze the weaknesses that an organization is suffering from, especially Narayana Hridayalaya, from performing its optimum level. They are the areas where the business needs to improve to remain competitive, like a weak brand or higher than average turnover, high levels of debt, and inadequate supply chain, etc. So in the opportunities and threats part, basically these are all analysis of the external environment. So in the threats, we have threat factors. Threats refer to the factors that have a potential to harm an organization. For example, a drought is a threat to a wheat producing company as it may destroy or reduce crop yield. Other threats include like rising costs of material, increasing competition, tight labor supply, and so on. And in the opportunities part, we refer to favorable external factors that could give an organization a competitive advantage. For example, if a country cuts off tariffs, a car manufacturer can export its car to a new market segment, increase in sales and market share, etc. And a SWOT analysis is generally a great way to guide a business strategy meetings. It's powerful to have everyone in the room to discuss about the company's core strengths, weaknesses, define opportunities and threat, and brainstorm ideas. Oftentimes, the SWOT analysis you envision before session changes throughout the reflect the factors that you are unaware of and would never have captured if not for the group's input. A company can use SWOT analysis for overall business strategy sessions for specific segments such as marketing, production, or sales. This way, you can see how the overall developed strategy from SWOT analysis will filter down to the segments below before commenting to it. You can work in reverse with a segment specific SWOT analysis that feeds to an overall SWOT analysis. Although a useful tool, SWOT analysis has its own limitations. It is one of the several business planning techniques to consider and should not be used alone. Also, each point listed within the categories is not prioritized the same. SWOT does not account for the differences in the weight. Therefore, a deeper analysis is needed using this as another technique. And basically, we have divided these four into four people will be presenting one of each. Like strengths are presented by Aditya, then weaknesses by Vishal, opportunities by Karun, and threats by me. So now I'm passing on the baton to Aditya, who shall discuss about the strengths of Narayana Hridayalaya.
Thank you, Suresh. Managing the marketing process is key to a firm's success. The first step in this process is analysis, followed by planning, implementation, and control. As part of the analysis, we chose the SWOT model, and Suresh has explained why. Let me now talk about the S in the SWOT, which is strengths of NH. NH has adopted two winning strategies. One is cost leadership, the other is operational excellence. And it has been able to achieve competitive advantage reflected via its market penetration strategy, unique value proposition, and the positioning statement, which essentially talks about affordable cardiac care for the masses. There are certain variables that are indispensable in any industry, including the healthcare industry, but NH has been able to gain the first mover or the early mover advantage by tweaking a few of these variables to its advantage, like, for example, leveraging technology. Driven by the leader's clear vision and passion, and aided by a strong team of dedicated professionals and a captive supply of talent pool, NH has achieved leadership in the industry.
Hi, I'll take up the weaknesses. Like any other organization, NH also has its own share of weaknesses. We believe NH is significantly dependent on Dr. Shetty's vision. This, in our view, leads to a concentration of ideation and decision making only on one person. In a corporate kind of a setup, it's always best to have the firm driven by a group of qualified professionals. With this, it takes us to the next set of weakness, which is it makes us wonder that is there a succession plan in place for the organization? In order to ensure that there is longevity, the vision of NH is protected and it is perpetual, it's going to be very important that the baton is over a period of time passed on to someone else as well, or maybe a group of team, which at least we, based on the assessment that we had based on a case study, seems to suggest that that is lacking at this point in time, and that could be a major weakness going forward as the organization grows. Currently, NH's operations are primarily concentrated only in the state of Karnataka. We believe that while NH has been able to establish a very, very strong foothold in this geography, it is also going to be important for NH to also consider expanding its wings into other geographies as well, of course, keeping into consideration other parameters and the total addressable market as well in the other geographies. But diversification is something that, considering the experience that it has in this industry, is something that NH should really consider going forward. With growing competition, talent retention, of course, is going to be a challenge. As Aditya mentioned, the NH currently has an excellent set of doctors and nurses. However, retaining them is going to be a big challenge for NH as it grows. It would essentially mean that there could either be an increase in cost for NH, which would mean that they'll have to retain doctors maybe at a higher cost, or also maybe at some point in time also compromise over less experienced doctors as well, which of course is a large risk, considering that it does thrive upon the fact that it provides top class services. So that is something that as a weakness that NH currently has. While NH's USP has been to offer top class healthcare services at a very, very low cost, whether it will be able to sustain the same in the future or not is something we believe could be a big challenge for them to sustain. Considering that there could be cost, increase in cost on various parameters, which could be a mix of your administrative cost, your salaries, your consumables, and so on. There's going to be a pressure on cost and hence the eventual profitability as well. Having said so, how will it be able to sustain its operations at the same time meeting its objective of providing subsidized and affordable services is a big question. For availing healthcare services, there is of course a high dependence on its donors and some of the other schemes, both as have been initiated by NH as well by the government as well. Any reduction in this funding stream could have an eventual impact on NH's ability to be able to provide the services that it currently gives. And at the same time, some of the patients who are wanting to avail of these services, the limitation on their ability as well to come to NH and obtain the service. Lastly, in terms of the kind of services that NH is currently offering, it seems that it's largely skewed towards healthcare services. From a pure business economics perspective, it makes more sense for any business to try and diversify to the extent possible. And hence, it should think about, or rather, it should actually evaluate, does it make merit for them to also expand into other healthcare services as well? So that from an overall business perspective, there is diversification and not heavy reliance on only one healthcare, which is cardiac services at this point in time. With that, I'll invite Karun to share his thoughts on opportunity.
Thank you, Vishal. So moving on to opportunities, I know Vishal spoke about some of the weaknesses, but we believe if that is managed well, NH could convert that into the opportunities, which we will talk about now. So the first one is around the gap between demand and supply. I think there is a lot to offer for institutions like NH, which is we believe is one of their opportunities. So a few data points, I think in the case study is that every year we need around 2.4 million surgeries, but only 60,000 get done. The Indians are more prone to heart disease, so it is one of the most common illness that we have in the country. And also, if you look at Exhibit 7 in terms of the coverage of the number of physicians or number of beds per 1,000 Indians, it is pretty low. So all of these things tend to indicate that there is a good scope for institutions like NH to expand and a good opportunity as they look forward. Economy in India has been growing. I think after the liberalization that happened in early 90s, if you look at the case study between 1999 to 2004, Indian economy is growing at 6+%. The number of middle class people are growing and their income has been going up. So there will obviously be an affinity towards world-class healthcare services, and we will see a lot more people opting for services like NH because of the quality of service that they present. One of the weakness Vishal spoke about is, of course, the geographical expansion and both vertical expansion. We believe that is an opportunity again, in case it is managed well. So NH has established a good brand for themselves. They are providing the quality healthcare. They have a good economic model. So there is a good opportunity that they could expand not only the core business, which we also is a great opportunity, but also in the non-cardiac services. There is a discussion around the health city which they plan to build, and I think there is a lot of synergies if they look for that health city concept and they're able to expand into multiple other services beyond cardiac. Awareness, I think we continue to need to aware people. I think Mr. Shetty has done pretty well in terms of creating awareness through schemes like Yashaswini and few other things where people have actually started to come more under the healthcare umbrella. The problem today is that people are not even aware in terms of what are the health problems that they could get into and what are the areas that they need to go. We saw a little bit of a glimpse in terms of how NH is trying to address it, but we believe there is massive opportunity for us to drive awareness, both in terms of the health issues which are there in the country and also what the institutions like NH has to offer. So that clearly presents a good strength for companies like NH to grow. Alternative revenue streams, I will not speak about it because it goes back and linked to the diversification strategy that we spoke about in bullet number 3. On the technology front, we believe NH is one of the pioneers of really embracing technology. There are a lot of examples that you will find in the case study, right? The way they are moving from film-based X-rays to the digital X-rays, the way they partnered with ISRO for the streaming of the ESG or ECG reports, the way they are able to get their daily report in terms of cash, etc. There are a lot of good examples of automation they have already done. Now, having made that head start, we believe there is tremendous opportunity for them to be the true leaders in embracing technology and really drive cost efficiency as they look to expand both in the core and the non-core businesses. The last but not the least, I think again, we saw a few examples in the case study of the government tie-ups. They have tied up with ISRO on technology. They have tied up with the state of government of Karnataka in terms of their Yashaswini and other schemes. We believe that because of the model and because of the brand that they have built and because of the cause that they have, they could expand those partnerships to multiple other state governments, and they could get multiple other private and public players to be with them, which will really address them to grow big and have that much more impact and be more effective in the market. So with that, I will pass it on back to Suresh to cover threats and just close on this slide.
Thank you, Karun. Without considering threats, the dissection of a strategy of a company is inadequate. So actually, where the threats come? The biggest threat comes from the government itself. As per the mandate of Constitution under Article 47, it is the mandate of the government to take care of the health of all citizens and also to guarantee health for all. So indeed, apart from state government, though it is majorly an initiative of state government, central government and local bodies too run their own hospitals. So currently, this particular government run health infrastructure and setup is suffering from certain problems like inadequate funds. Currently, the expenditure towards health is 20% of overall India's health expenditure, and 80% is driven largely by private individuals or corporates. So if there is a case where government itself improves and allocates more and more budget, definitely it will be a biggest threat. For example, case in point is Rajiv Arogyasri, started by Dr. Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy himself, being a doctor known to be a compassionate doctor. He used to charge in those days 1 rupee, for treating his own patients. So later, when he became Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh in 2007, he initiated a scheme called as Rajiv Arogyasri, whereby he integrated entire state infrastructure by taking into consideration the 108 service, which is basically providing critical emergency care through ambulances, then 104 service by sending mobile health unit to all the villages. It covered almost every village in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Then it has integrated that with the white card holders having access to Arogyasri, where they can walk into any hospital, be it government, private, or of their choice, and as per their access and emergency. So with that integration, he has ensured that lakhs and crores of people, around 85% of Andhra population, is effectively covered by it. It is free of cost. So this is the biggest threat the model will be having. And then if you see the experiences of various countries, especially developed countries, except to USA, all the developed countries, the public health care takes care of almost majority of the population. So in India, that may be a threat in future to come if governments like AP or any other, like even the same scheme is replicated by few states like Karnataka, Rajasthan, even Delhi, Mohalla clinics, all those things, if they becomes more successful, naturally this particular model of NH may be under threat. Then the next important threat is, which I feel is in fact a threat from competitors and isomorphism. So naturally, as we have seen in the previous case study, Coke wars between Pepsi and Coca-Cola. So what we found is the competitors more or less, though there is a first mover advantage to Coca-Cola, later Pepsi cashed up. So there is a possibility that other competitors of Narayana Hridayalaya may catch up most of the strategies, and they integrate into their strategy, and it may lead to isomorphism, whereby in the long run maybe they may not sustain as they are today, and it may lead to a brand erosion, whereby their top line as well as bottom line will be badly affected. Then the next thing is having less entry barriers. There is a scope that many people may venture into the similar segment, like say as the weaknesses are being pointed out by Vishal. Talent retention is a huge challenge, especially given the fact that doctors have to slog 16 to 18 hours. If these doctors, they found it to be a little more taxing on them, they may set up, or they may be lured by other players to bring them on board, and that may lead to even further fragmentization of the market within which NH is thriving. Apart from that, it is again subject to economic downturns or cycles, like the COVID or the so-called recession. So it is not immune to it. If there is such kind of a situation, then definitely, unless there is an emergency health care, rest of the health may be dented. And with this, I'm passing on back to Bhavin Bhai, who will take the next section, which is on what next. Bhavin?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. So yes, what is next? Just to take you forward to evaluate NH's way forward and what Dr. Shetty said about its inevitable 3 lines of business, which has to be gone hand in hand, which are as follows. That is, first is heart hospital. See, my all learned members have just told many things about NH and the heart hospital, what they used to carry activities and so on and so forth. But the only one thing which plays in our mind is scalable. Is this heart hospital or is this cardiac care scalable and sustainable business model in relation to the best cocktail of affordability and quality way forward? Yes, in the current scenario, the answer is yes, because what we all shared in the earlier slides that cardiac care, as far as the business model of Dr. Shetty's NH Institute is concerned, is scalable and sustainable. That is point number 1. Point number 2 is the Yashaswini insurance scheme. See, his NH's endeavor or Dr. Shetty's endeavor was to give an access to the poor. So he started with farmers and their families, and then they pushed the complete ecosystem from the patients, hospitals, state government's contribution, post offices involved, and all these TPAs are getting into practice. So all this kind of with all these kind of things, a complete ecosystem is evolving in this case. So even state government contributed 50%. Telemedicine also contributed somewhere and some from their own sides. But having said that, still NH insurance coverage is not up to the mark as far as what we see. And there are many more avenues where it can be administered so that maximization of benefit takes place, as NH's endeavor is to get into masses for all the poor people. So that was about Yashaswini insurance scheme. The third point which they categorically Dr. Shetty mentioned was the health city. Now the basic question is whether we should go in the foray of the health city or not, which previously Professor just told before starting this presentation. So I'll just take you to what are there into it, and then we all can decide how to move it or how to take it further. In reference to that, let me share a few facts about these things. That affordable segment to other specialties. Now this is a critical factor which we need to think that yes, cardiac care seems to be affordable. We have seen from all facts and figures from all the exhibits underlying to the case study. But do affordable healthcare applies to the other specialties? Yes, from the case study, it is seen that in terms of neuro, onco, where we see large complex surgeries were taken care of, utilization of unused bloods were taken care of, utilization of existing equipments leading to the cost optimization was taken care of for the quality, to provide the quality and affordability for masses of people who even lack basic care. So way forward, looking towards the current scenario, yes, it seems to be taken care of towards a new health city kind of an environment, but only creating few therapies into the basket doesn't lead to a health city. It starts from basically acquisition of land, because the cost also is incurred over in that part. So we have to see that whether that land has to be procured within the city or outskirts of the city, because there is always a huge difference of cost when we procure land within the city or outside the city. So these are the minute factors we need to taken care of before identifying and coming to a conclusion whether the health city, whether the dream of Dr. Shetty about the health city seems to be justifiable in the current scenario or way forward. So I would take this question on a later note to the team at large to discuss and to take it forward. These are the 3 lines of business. The next part of the Walmartization of healthcare beyond his area of specialization. As we all know, the specialization areas of Dr. Shetty. So I will not go into a repetitive part, but just to add upon that, yes, he was a pioneer in Walmartization of our cardiac care. There is no question of doubt about it, looking towards the facts of the case is concerned. But would it be continued in the coming onco, neuro, nephro, or what kind of other facilities he is trying to take care of? There is a big question in all of our mind. So I think that we need to discuss about that, whether even Walmartization in other specialized areas apart from what he currently has is scalable or sustainable. So there is a question underlying with this. So I'll just hand over my baton to Karun to take it forward.
Thank you, Bhavin. So team, just moving on to a few other pertinent questions. The third one is, of course, what drove its success and is this model sustainable, right? So a couple of things which we believe drove the success. One, of course, is the focus on quality. I think this is one thing they never compromised on, be that with respect to the equipments they purchase or with respect to the quality of doctors that they hire or quality of the machines and nurses, etc. that we saw. So I think there is a pretty strong focus on quality, which we're able to maintain throughout. Second thing is their cost economic model. I think team has spoken enough in terms of how were they able to reduce the cost by focusing on maximum utilization and occupancy, which is a big success. Third, of course, people, as I said, they have the finest quality doctors who were hired from all over the world. And the training programs that they undergo internally, both for the doctors and nurses, really provide the quality care to the people at large. So these few things we believe is what drove the success. Now, is it sustainable? I think what we also read in the case study is that some of the doctors, because of the high occupancy, has to work pretty long hours. So that is a point for us to consider, that if this type of a model has to really sustain, then it means there has to be a great focus on the quality, has to be maintained. The technology has to play a big role. The cost efficiency has to continue. But in the process, we need not forget the software aspects in terms of how do we handle people and are they really providing the quality services on a consistent basis is something for us as a group to think through and think the way forward. Moving on to the next point, which is more around one man's vision versus a fundamental change. I know this is a point in everybody's mind in terms of, is Mr. Shetty or Dr. Shetty greater than the institution, and you know what has he done for the healthcare industry? We believe that while it all started with a one man's vision and mission and what he has done, but I think this is a shining example for the entire healthcare sector in terms of what he has done. So he really started with a vision. He has a model in place. He kept on innovating as he went through in terms of the CCUs, in terms of the mobile van, in terms of telemedicine, in terms of insurance schemes. So all of these, of course, were a brainchild of Dr. Shetty because he really wanted to get his mission, which is to provide healthcare to the masses. But eventually for the organizations to sustain, of course, it has to be an underlying change in the institution. You need to build processes which could self-sustain. You need to have technology play a bigger role. You need to have a second line of leadership, which is well in place for these institutions to continue. So we believe, I think it all started with his vision, but he has had a great example, a great model, which is really benefiting the people at large. Something definitely that other industries could replicate, and more so I think within NH and institutions like NH, there is tremendous opportunity to grow, but then it has to eventually boil down into an institutional change so that that thing and the quality could be sustained. So with that, probably pass it on back to Suresh.
Thank you, Karun. Actually, this question is very vital. Can it be adopted to other developing countries? Answer to it is there are a host of factors that decides this particular question. Like as per Sustainable Development Goal 3, it is the government which is responsible to ensure that public health care is ensured in their country, to ensure that health for all is guaranteed. So, and government in the long run, it has to. So that may become, again, a kind of a threat to the business model which NH is largely driven by. Then the second factor which we have to consider is the economic factor. How big is the country? What is the disposable incomes? And whether there is a growth, is it declining country, or what is its demographics? What is the health conditions? How much of investments do that country can really put in? The experience of the doctors or the health infrastructure within the country, and so on and so forth. There are so many host of factors that need to be taken into consideration. And yes, it can be replicable where the private players are, much performing much better than the government setup. And second thing is when they have enough, so-called threshold level, like countries like say Indonesia, Nigeria, or Mexico, Brazil, all these developing countries which have a large population base, maybe it can be adopted. In countries say like small countries like Bhutan or Lesotho or Swaziland, all these countries, they are too small to have any sustainable model for private sector to play in. So now with this, I pass on the baton to Aditya.
I come to the last point in the presentation. And here I would like to state that the authors of the case study, have expressed a slightly negative concern, although it's laced with a little bit of humor over Dr. Shetty's plan of a quote unquote health city. They state in the case that he now looked adolescent, almost a 10-year-old with a dream. However, our group's perspective is in the contrary. If you look at the core marketing concept that NH has effectively harnessed in order to balance profitability as well as philanthropy, it's societal marketing. Based on this societal marketing concept, they have smartly used strategies of segmentation, targeting, positioning, and differentiation in the healthcare industry, as explained earlier in detail by my colleagues. Most of us will agree that NH is currently, as per the facts of the case, in its growth phase, as per a firm's life cycle graph. However, the moot question, the important question now is, what will happen when NH moves towards a more mature phase? Till now, it has used the price adjustment strategy by offering customer segment pricing and good value pricing. Can it still hold on to its winning strategies of cost leadership and operational excellence as it expands its vision and implements the concept of the health city? As per the facts of the case, the verdict is still out on this one. However, one thing is certain: strategy is dynamic, and NH evolves further. As it evolves further, key man or not, key man, when I say, I mean Dr. Shetty, whether he's there or not, the firm will need to keep managing the marketing process and keep using the marketing mix of product, price, place, and promotion by continuously tweaking the external variables as per the prevalent industry structure. And obviously, its consequent internal analysis, which is SWOT. It's very important to note over here that it's not always the market innovator or the early mover who sustains the leadership in a particular industry. With this, I wish NH, I wish Dr. Shetty and the entire team of NH the best of luck for the future. But at the same time, on a lighter note, I strongly advise our entire batch not to ask too many questions. And I also urge further caution, since we cannot guarantee all the answers to the difficult questions, especially. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the discussion. We may have one or two questions, and then I'm going to take it up from there. Yes, if anyone has a question, one or two questions, that's it.